So next, we're going to go straight to the next conversation. So I'd like to welcome the CEO of Movere, Kristin Ireland. Kristin, please come up. Hi, welcome.
Thanks, Matt.
Please take a seat. Hopefully your microphone will work. So I opened yesterday talking about how we've got this this decidedly cross section, right? Cross vertical, cross function, and so Movere is probably the earliest stage company we have on the main stage over the course of this event. So it's very early in some ways, 25 employees or there around, but doubling growth over the last couple years. So started in the millions and just so extreme growth. So there's a story here about what you're doing internally, but then also what you are doing for customers, which is kind of essentially using machine learning to optimize the use of their cloud resources and knowing what's being used and so on. So there's two sides. So I kind of want to start, if you will, with your own journey. Can you talk a little bit, maybe first of all, set us up with what you do exactly and how you're using ML to realize that growth?
Sure. So I think it's helpful to start a little further back when I talk about what we do. As we started the company, it was always about using data to tell a story, and typically for an enterprise customer in terms of what they have. And how we focus is really around data integrity, understanding exactly where you got the data, what the data point is that we're collecting, why we're collecting it. And I've heard quite a few people today and yesterday talk about the attributes, making sure that you're talking about and recording the attributes or tagging each of the data points that you're pulling back. How we help customers is, as we pull all the data and we integrate all of these disparate data sets into a single pane of glass, that really helps them see what it is that they don't know. And to the tune of about 25% is typically what they don't know about their environment and what they have. And when you're talking about enterprise customers and the thousands or tens of thousands of servers, that's quite a lot.
So there was an interesting journey you told me about how you, and again, you started from scratch, so you didn't have the resources of an Uber setting you off. You're self-funded, right? So no venture capital. So again, take us through I think you said you had to rebuild Movere 5 times as you went to the cloud, and that's part of the learning that you then were able to help others with, how to move to the cloud. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, you bet.
That history.
That was fun. So as we were building the end-to-end solution, what we were, and at the same time also refactoring it to be cloud native, we were in pretty new territory, and this was about 5 years ago. And as we built, we realized that the sizes that we thought were required for us to build different pieces of the stack were too small, or they were way too big, and we were pouring money down the drain on the wrong sizes, so we had to keep rebuilding. And at that point in time, and the cloud wasn't quite as mature as it is today, and the ability just to shift a specific VM size into the next VM size was not possible, so you'd have to just kill the VM and rebuild it again. And after we went through that excruciating process, we said, we can't possibly let our customers go through this. What did we learn? What can we do and what did we learn from this experience, and what can we do to be better, and then share that with our customers so that they don't have to face the same trial and tribulation and lots of tears and bloodshed trying to be successful in their digital transformation. And that's when we built the actual resource consumption. And what that does is what we needed when we were building Movere, which is identifying exactly what your servers are doing, how they're being used, are they being used, down to the process level, so that when you're looking at, and also identifying all the dependencies that map back to that application. So as you're contemplating a move to the cloud or optimization, you have a much better idea of what it is that you need. And then we do pricing on top of it between clouds so that people can make really good decisions about and be confident about the decisions that they're making.
Great. So you talked about agentless bots and so some of the ways you were collecting this data. Can you walk us through that and then kind of take us up through the use of machine learning and kind of the aha process over the last 2 or 3 years that led to this exponential growth that you're seeing?
Sure.
So it's a lot there, but the agentless bots. I think we're not allowed to use the word bots apparently from yesterday. But tell us about the significance of that.
Sure. The funny part, I had a bit of a chuckle yesterday when somebody was talking about the bad word that is bot. Where we live, the bad word for us is agent. And so bot is a very welcome word. And so when we started talking about how it is that we're going to actually extract the data for our customers, we had to come at it. We didn't have a choice. We had to come at it from this approach of what is the least invasive way to go and extract a lot of data from a lot of different servers in different domains and different geos, and you start thinking about latency and network and all that really fun, exciting stuff. And our approach was, there's not just one way to scan a cat, there are multiple. So if we bake in not only this sort of archaic thing called WMI, but also leveraging the .NET framework to speed up, but also reduce the bandwidth and the time frame that it takes to actually retrieve the data. And then we realized too, hey, most of the devices, not all, but most devices can actually talk to the outside world. So at that point, just ship the data directly to us and secure it and all those kind of good things, so that when we can actually get the data faster, turn it around and do its ETL, process it for customers real time.
So for the rest of the audience here, in terms of we do have a good representation of smaller companies. What are some of the lessons? We've talked about hiring, for example, the lessons that you might be able to share in terms of getting to the stage of breakthrough growth using ML, whether it's hiring, infrastructure, setup.
The bolt-on versus hire.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Our approach has always been, the people that we have with us are really passionate and they're excited and they want to drive value for customers any way they possibly can. And we have really smart, amazing team. So if we pull that team together and talk about the problems, what do they see? What do they hear from customers? How do you think of a way that we can solve that problem? We have 80 billion data points. What is it that we have in the repository that would help inform a potential solution? And so I think of that as sort of layman's ML, right? Use your internal resources to think about solving a problem. And then the flip of it is, when you do have the resources to go and hire or think through a bolt-on, you have a direction. And you're able to move significantly faster because you have an idea of what it is that you need or you want. And of course, all of the cloud platforms, AWS, Azure, GCP, all offer ML and AI solutions and tools to help sort of grease the skids, as it were, into helping companies, including us, how you think about how that can transform your business.
So we've touched on your own growth and some of those learnings. Let's switch to the customers, right? So you're now in this phase where you were working through Microsoft and Amazon. So behind the scenes, licensed software, so that you didn't really have that direct connection with customers. And now you're here, talking kind of now publicly for the first time, reaching out to a whole bunch of new players and middlemen and so on. you talk a little bit about what you are doing for those customers as they move to the cloud? What are, to take advantage of AI? What are some of the challenges you're seeing, lessons from the customers you do know information about?
What I can share is through our relationship with Microsoft and continuing relationship and building relationships with companies like AWS, the customers that we do talk to, they're all touching it. They're all trying to figure it out. And cloud is the mechanism that is allowing them to do it faster. And how we help those customers think about that is we talk to them about infrastructure. How do you move your infrastructure first and foremost? It's about using the resources you have to be the most efficient. And a clear way, and also touching also on ML, is how we actually do the sizing itself when you're talking about on-prem versus cloud. There's this thing that many, even GSIs will talk to you about, is lift and shift, which is this notion of drag and drop your infrastructure into the cloud. And it is not what we recommend. It is not efficient. You're going to pay through the nose. I guarantee you're going to pay in 1 month what you would normally have thought you were going to pay for a year in cloud services. If you take the time, and it's not that much time, right? Run Arc for a week, and what you'll find is when we do an optimization comparison of just running your infrastructure, but optimize how you're using it and what you're using it for, it reduces your cloud costs by half, at least half. And that's millions of dollars that you can then shift and use for things like really cool stuff like ML and AI. Let us do that sort of heavy lifting for you. But the other piece in terms of how we think and start to demonstrate what ML is capable of is using a pretty standard statistical analysis called standard deviation when you're talking about usage down to a process level. And so what we show customers is, hey, here's your standard deviation and second and third standard deviation. But what it also does is by showing them what you are using, the bigger the deviation, the peakier your workloads. Why is that? Probably because you need to identify what it is that you're doing or not doing there. It's probably there's a bunch of capacity that you're not using. The shorter the deviations are together, the more efficient you're using the infrastructure that you have. And as that then percolates up into cloud sizing, customers then think through what is my comfort level. I want to be 99% comfortable that whatever I'm moving and the size that I'm moving is actually going to get me where I want to go. And for us, that's really key, is helping customers get comfortable with cloud, because they're all doing it. Every single enterprise, and we're talking 2,000 that we've touched in the last year and a half or so. They're all talking about ML and AI.
Yeah, and you mentioned in prep that you were astounded by kind of the average customer among these 2,000 literally don't know what's going on in about 25% of their capacity. Yep. Right, whether it's on premise or cloud.
That's right.
And machine learning is helping reduce that, right? So there's a big cost reduction there in terms of the usage there. So I'm curious what questions might the audience have for Kristin at Movere. Yep, Mike.
So you say that you're moving toward a point where you're going to be able to help your enterprise customers optimize workloads on bare metal in virtualized environments and containerized environments? And if so, how far away are we from that?
Well, that's awesome. Thank you. I did not plant him. That's actually how we started, was around optimization of on-prem infrastructure, bare metal, and then talking about, and I was telling Matt this story that we didn't see virtualization take off in enterprises till about 2011, 2012. We've been in business since 2008, to the point where I remember installing ESX, right? Back when it was free, and you got 60 days, right? And then we had to kill it and then reinstall it because I wasn't going to pay for it. Think like a pirate, you got to be a pirate. Anyways, But what we started realizing is this thing called virtualization was really taking off. And how do we help customers understand what that did? And of course, what's really interesting about virtualization is that the promise of it was to better use your bare metal, right? You can use your RAM and your CPU to a significant depth. It's totally worth it, but that's what it ended up doing for the IT industry. Didn't really have a lot to do with that. It was more about thinking about building your applications horizontally instead of vertically. And then this thing called DER and high availability and distributed resource scheduling started to really, I think, craft IT and the glory that is the basement of IT departments in a completely different way. And we see the same thing happening with cloud. So absolutely, we already do that, and we are all about containers, which is one of the reasons why we do so much work around process, right? And in fact, I'm really excited. November 5th, we're doing a huge release, which is containerizing our stack. And again, just like we did with identifying actual resource consumption, we're going to share exactly what we learned, and we have learned a lot about containerizing stack and refactoring.
And the majority of your customers are pushing on containers now as well?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Kristin? Got time for a couple more.
Yeah, back here. Michael Butler, I'm with VMware, so where should I send the invoice?
I already paid. I just got audited. Thank you very much.
No, great panel. So just asking about how do you guys see yourself competing with like a Cloud Health that we just bought, or what's the differentiator right there?
I had an investor ask me that very same question. Complementary. So one of the things that we do really well, we do a lot of things very well, is discovery. We're deep on discovery and the integrity of the data that we get. So somebody like companies like that live in that part of the stack, what we find is that they tend to live in cloud, and we are very much about hybrid. It has to be hybrid, especially for enterprise customers, and you start talking about banks and healthcare. The likelihood that they're going to be 100% cloud is, I never say 100%, but pretty minimal. I look forward to talking to you after the session.
Hi, there is a new class of companies that are
yourself?
doing.
Who
My name is Wahid. I'm CEO of a company called Esmer.
Okay,
but
thanks.
my question is, there's a class of companies coming out that actually are helping you optimize your spend on AWS and Azure. So do you think that in the public world, they might compete with you more aggressively?
In the public world? Meaning as an IPO or just generally speaking in the market?
How do you compare with them? How are you differentiated, or is it in the same class?
So those guys usually focus on cloud. They're niche, right? Singular focus, which is great. And for some companies that works really well. What we also find is that they tend to be that agent-based.
Yeah.
And they really focus on cloud. How we talk to customers, because enterprise customers are our primary, is about hybrid and going deep across the stack, up and down, and talking about containers. And cloud cost is one of many dimensions to think through what you're utilizing cloud for. And really, truly, the conversation when it comes to cloud or even containers or ML and AI, don't hit me, Matt, isn't about how much money you're going to make or how much money you're going to save. It's about utilizing a piece of tech that's going to enable your business and is going to continue to help you be relevant. The market is moving so fast that your ability to really buy in and use that tech or whatever is available to the best of your ability to service your customers in a different way is key. So,
Great. Do you have time for one last question? Anyone out there? Yeah, so Mike will go.
I can't help myself.
my
Yeah, sure.
plant.
It's great.
Yeah.
Your plant, yeah, thank you by that.
I'll pay you
for
later.
that. So building on that question, right, I was at the 451 conference about a month ago, and the three major public cloud vendors tripped all over themselves to talk about how they're embracing companies just like you, right? And it's a replication of the VAR model that we know from the hardware days. So can you comment on where we are in that new way for them to go to market? It seems like a very big shift in their mindset. And from what I've been told, Microsoft is way out ahead in terms of their understanding of the enterprise and their sales force's ability to actually, help solve problems. But I'd love to get your perspective. And I don't expect you to bash the other guys on stage, but anything that you can say that would be insightful and that would be very helpful.
Sure. I have seen the same. Microsoft has always been a partner-led company. What I see is AWS and GCP starting to embrace that model as well. There is a lot of territory. It's very competitive across the enterprise stack, whether you're talking about the top end of the top Fortune 2000 or if you're talking about SMB, your businesses. There's a lot of competition for smaller businesses. And it is pretty much wide open, and they're doing everything that they can to connect with customers to identify how it is that their service can add value to those businesses. So absolutely, they are all figuring out the partner model. Microsoft is a little bit ahead because that's how they have always done business, and they know how LARs and VARs work, but they also have a pretty deep stack of GSIs and other niche players because they have a deep software stack. And yes, they have deep relationships with enterprise customers because, much like my friend from VMware back there, they have licenses that they need to sell to talk about their software, right? And so it's a little bit different for AWS and GCP. GCP has an opportunity, I think, to maybe double down a little bit. They've been competing with Microsoft on some pieces of that software, right? So they potentially have a little bit of an edge, but AWS is also a really smart company, and they all have really great people who are trying to figure out how to add value to their customers.
Thank you. Sorry, Kristin, thank you very much. We are out of time. That was a great conversation.
Yeah. Thank you.